35 years, Dos and Bertie Winkel have traveled the globe, driven by a passion to photograph wildlife and local cultures. Joining them on this journey is daughter Femke, an apprentice with a keen eye and an eagerness to learn the tricks of the trade. They're facing perhaps their most challenging assignment to date, to capture on film the rugged beauty and breathtaking contrasts of one of the most spectacular countries on Earth, Peru. Peru is a country split from north to south by the long Andes mountain range. Rising to 6,000 meters, they've formed a physical barrier to both nature and culture for centuries. Even today, few roads pass through them, connecting the coast with the interior. On the Andes' western side lies a narrow desert coastal strip. It's one of the driest places on Earth, yet home to nearly half of all Peruvians. The Andes' eastern slopes are shrouded in a mantle of green cloud forest, which in turn drop down to the vast lowland rainforests of the Amazon basin. For the next 8 weeks, Dos and his team will explore the unexposed jungle world of Peru in search of the perfect picture. They'll travel deep into the Amazonian lowlands with Dario, an animal caller who miraculously lures forest creatures in front of the camera. In the pristine cloud forests of central Peru, Dos joins a scientific expedition, making a detailed record of the life in its crystal-clear rivers, discovering species new to science. In the Manu National Park, which boasts one of the world's most diverse tropical rainforests, Dos and his family learn how the indigenous Machigenga people find a balance between their ancient customs and the rapidly infiltrating Western culture. Nearly 3/4 of Peru is covered by tropical rainforests. And the best starting point for an exploration of this vast sea of green is Puerto Maldonado, the gateway to the Peruvian Amazon. It is a town straddling two worlds, a modern-day version of a Wild West boomtown.
Puerto Maldonado is our starting point of this expedition. It's also the place where we are going to meet Stefan Austermüller. He's a German biologist who lives in Peru, and he will be our guide for the next 2 months.
Since the early 1970s and the discovery of gold, Puerto Maldonado has become one of the fastest growing towns in Peru, a base used by loggers and miners to exploit the natural resources of Peru's vast Amazonian lowlands.
Finally we're off. All the months of preparations have paid off, and I start to feel, as always with expeditions like this, the excitement. And I'm happy to leave the noise and the bustle of the town behind.
8 hours downstream lies one of the last truly wild places on Earth, the Pampas de Rio Heath, an area of lowland rainforest, lakes and swamps beside the Heath River, on Peru's eastern border with Bolivia. To help them unlock some of the mysteries here, Dos has enlisted the help of Dario, a remarkable man who can read the forest like a book.
One thing about Dario fascinates me more than anything. He's known as the animal caller because of his ability to communicate with the wild. A special gift that I hope will bring us closer to the creatures of the forest.
With the town now more than 6 hours away, the last vestiges of civilization are gone, and wildlife becomes more common. First, capybara. Weighing in at up to 60 kilograms, they're the largest rodents on Earth. Then a brown agouti, followed by a hungry caiman. It's the agouti's lucky day. He's managed not only to escape the caiman, but Dos as well.
Finally, we're there. I can't wait to meet our man of the forest, Dario. His newly renovated home will serve as our base camp for the following week's explorations.
Como es nueva, todavía no está bien terminada, ¿no? Estamos viviendo así.
Okay. It looks very new, yes.
For their first trip into the forest, Dario is keen to show them something special.
His calls trigger an almost immediate response from bands of monkeys.
Eventually, a group of brown capuchin gets really close. Considered the most intelligent of the New World monkeys, the capuchin gets its name from the patch of black hair on the top of its head, which looks like a capuche or a monk's hood.
I'm intrigued by what is drawing them to us. Are they just curious? Or is something specific being communicated here? For years, I've wanted to photograph the giant macaw in its natural habitat, and this is the place to do it.
Dario knows an ideal place to build a hide. A so-called clay lick, which acts as an incredible attraction to forest animals and birds.
Is that the lick over there where the holes are?
Incredibly, it was only a few years ago that Western biologists learnt how important these clay outcrops are to the overall health of the forest. Clay is a vital but mysterious part of the diet of many animals and birds here. They use it to neutralize and detoxify themselves from the plant poisons they take up in their diet.
Now we have to decide where we are going to build our hides. It seems that some of the best places are already taken.
He's never done this before, but Dario wants them to build a hide just 6 meters away from the clay wall. This will allow them to get really close to the birds.
Okay, Betty, do you want to start here, in this height?
For the insects at least, it looks as though Femke is as tasty as the clay.
There are too many mosquitoes here. But the big question for me is, even with a hide like this, will the macaws tolerate our presence here?
You like it?
Now we have a great view at the clay lake, and all we need is birds. But for those, we have to wait till dawn tomorrow and hope that they will return.
Meanwhile, Dario is determined not to give them a moment's rest. They follow him on a long hike into the forest, away from the river, towards an inland lagoon where he promises them something special.
At the same time each day, tarikayas, a kind of freshwater turtle, climb onto a log to sunbathe. To my delight, butterflies are dancing around their heads. They are attracted by the minerals secreted from their tear glands. Dario tells us to be as quiet as possible. Just the slightest sound will chase them back into the water.
Then Dario really puts his skills to the test. This call is for the giant river otter, a shy and increasingly rare forest predator. Because of pollution and overfishing, only 75 pairs are thought to survive in these forests, an area the size of the Netherlands.
Dario's calls are creating an extraordinary response in the otters. He's actually provoking them by imitating the sound of an intruding male otter. The response is so immediate and aggressive. Obviously they are very territorial animals and clearly upset by Dario's sounds. When Dario stops, they relax and start to feed. For us, the best moment to take pictures. An adult needs to eat 4 kilos of fish a day. No wonder they call it a river wolf.
It was this skill in animal calling that made Dario such a good hunter. Now working for the National Park Service, he's turned his talent to conservation, out of concern for the rapidly depleting numbers. For 30 million years, the giant otter has lived and played in these waters. Though seriously threatened, with the likes of Dario on their side, they once again have a future.
Still an hour and a half before sunrise, and we're on our way to the clay lake. I really hope the macaws are feeling a little bit more up to it than I do right now. It's always a rush in the dark to get everything set up in the hide before the first birds arrive around daybreak. After that, Dario makes clear to us that any sound or any movement will chase the birds away and they won't come back for the rest of the day. exactly as Dario had predicted, at 6 o'clock sharp, the first birds arrive. It's really incredible. It's the Heelys and the blue-headed parrots. And by now, the ants are getting to our breakfast. We don't dare to touch it. Even the sound of a breaking cheese cracker will be enough to scare the birds off. Finally, the Heelys and the blue-headed parrots come onto the clay wall. But still no sign of the macaws. Are they really smart enough to sense our presence? Or is it just that they don't come to the lick every day? Every morning we go back to the clay lick to set up in the hide. But there are still no macaws on the clay wall. But we see them everywhere, in the treetops, but they don't come down. This is so frustrating, I'll tell you. The hides are too close. They're really too close. They know that we are there, they see us, they smell us, they hear us, even if we breathe. We're too close. We're also too many. My plan is to return for the last time tomorrow, and then just Femke and me.
But to fully appreciate the diversity in these forests, you need to come here after dark.
Tonight, Dario is taking us to a lake, which lies about a mile in from the river where we hope to find and photograph caiman. But for that, we need a boat. And this dugout weighs hundreds of kilos. Now it's time to go in search of caiman. It won't be easy to find one though, as they've almost been hunted to extinction for their skin. Then, suddenly out of the inky blackness, there he is. One of the older survivors of the rainforest, with an ancestral line taking him back to the time of the dinosaurs. Hanging in our torchlight, as if frozen in time. This is our very last shot at getting the photos of the macaws. To maximize our chances, I've decided no TV crew, no food, no water. We'll give it one final effort. Femke will film and I'll take the pictures. Fantastic! 6 days of aching muscles, insect bites, heat and frustration. But all the effort was more than worth it. So we did it!
Now that Dario is no longer hunting jaguar or giant otter, he sees their protection as something which can earn him a living in the future. His dream is to bring visitors into this forest to help them unlock its mysteries. While Bertie and Femke make plans to explore the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, Dos joins a scientific expedition into the remote cloud forests of central Peru. Stefan Austermüller and Nina Pardo, through their conservation organization Mundo Azul, organized this unique trip for a group of biologists and photographers. They're in for a treat, as these forests have remained out of bounds for years to outsiders, as they were an active base for terrorist groups such as the Shining Path.
We're heading to the remote upland rainforest region of Yanachaga-Chemien, situated almost in the center of this vast country. The goal of this expedition is to make a preliminary investigation of the fish life in the rivers of this rainforest. And I'm really excited about it, because my job will be to take the underwater photographs.
But that is still some way off. The journey to their place of study will take 3 full bone-jarring days. First by road, then when the terrain makes that impossible, by water.
I am glad the car ride is over, but I understand by talking to our guides that the 2-day boat trip into the jungle will be just as bumpy. For the first time, we get an idea of the scale of this expedition. I count 21 people to help us carry all the equipment. We have hundreds of kilos with us. Apart from all the food and the photo equipment, we also had to bring all our dive gear, the tanks and a compressor.
Biologist Stefan Austermüller has been planning this trip for more than a year.
The second tent is outside of the house in front of the wall, right? What time? Rock the boat.
I am happy to find out that I am not the only photographer. Joining us are renowned wildlife photographers Tui DeRoy and Mark Jones. Tui has lived and worked in the Galapagos Islands for many years, and she became world famous for her books featuring the Galapagos wildlife. We are heading upstream into the jungle. It's a strange idea that we are going uphill. With every rapid, we gain 1 or 2 meters in altitude.
The boatsmen are completely at home in these foaming waters and use great skill in steering the boats. The man in the front gives directions to the motorista in the rear, telling him where and how fast he should go.
For the 6th time today we leave the boats, taking the camera equipment with us so that the boatsmen can more easily negotiate the rapids. This is as far as we can get with the boats. From here, the only way to get further into the rainforest is to continue on foot. Now, the 21 porters really come into their own. Everything needs to be carried. Teobaldo, our almost 70-year-old cook, leads the way with his pots and pans. The higher we get, the more the trees are covered with moss and other epiphytes. And although there are lots of beautiful plants and flowers, one thing that really strikes me about this rainforest is the lack of bird and other animal sounds.
Finally, at the end of a long day's trek, they find an ideal place to set up the base camp. Teobaldo the cook immediately builds a fire to get the evening meal going, while the porters set up the tents.
Next morning after breakfast, Mark and Tui were talking with our cook Teobaldo. He told them that, incredibly enough, he used to live here 38 years ago.
Just a fascinating story. He actually used to live where we were camped upriver.
Really?
Yeah.
38 years ago.
38 years ago. Yeah.
Some 55 years ago, the government sponsored a group of 600 people to start new settlements in the Yanachaga cloud forest. Here the new settlers found an amazing wealth of fish and wildlife. Herds of peccaries, 500 strong, and large groups of deer. These they hunted down to almost extinction. With hardly any natural resources left, they abandoned Yanachaga after 15 years.
Doesn't seem to be
He said there
that
were
much wildlife anymore.
Before Teobaldo could finish his story, we heard a commotion in the camp. One of the porters had been attacked by a deadly viper and narrowly missed being bitten. The snake made a strike of about a meter, but luckily the young man jumped back fast enough.
It was coiled up right where they usually are, right at the edge of the water.
Yeah.
And as he walked by, he saw it and jumped at the same time as the snake. Wow. Struck. And apparently they can strike as much as a meter, and he said it missed him by just this much. And
They tell us that if you don't get treatment within 1 hour, you're dead.
You've got an hour to think about it.
Where we are days away from the nearest hospital. This snake that lives both on land and in the water was found near the pool where we are diving every day. I have had encounters with many poisonous sea snakes, but I know that as long as you don't harass them, they're totally harmless. But I have no idea how this one would react in the water. It's nice to see him, but to be honest, I hope we don't see him again.
From base camp, Dos makes short forays into the jungle in search of interesting photographic subjects. Most of the large animals might be gone, but small can also be beautiful. Finally, Stefan locates a suitable place for diving, and the hundreds of kilos of equipment carried in all this way can be put to good use.
For our purposes of determination, we will need pictures of the whole fish taken from the side so that we can have all the details of coloration, of the shape of the fins and the body.
The compressor fills the tanks with clean air, while the team gets on with their final preparations for the dive.
It feels strange to put on a wetsuit in these tropical temperatures. We need them as protection, and surprisingly, the water is cool as it comes from the high mountains. Hendrik, the main cameraman on this expedition, will be my buddy on the dives. We've worked for several years now on underwater shoots, and we make a good team. We are the first people to dive here. It's amazing to think that no one before us has ever looked at this river from this point of view. We see a whole range of fish. It's great to see that there are several species of fish here. For the scientific validity of the expedition, Stefan is not only investigating the number of species, but is also interested in the amount of fish per species. Therefore, Nina and Yuri are counting the fish. Some of these fish Stefan is able to identify, but others are probably new to science. The visibility for a rainforest is just extraordinary, much better than further down the river. But for me, the stars of the show are these diligent parents. They have an incredibly effective way of protecting their young. It sure is a mouthful.
Stefan and his assistant, biologist Yuri, catch samples of each species, which they take back to the lab for identification and further anatomical studies. After a week's hard work, the team finally begins the long journey out of this fragile, forgotten wilderness.
And I think we have incredible material about reproduction behavior, about colorations, about fish species. And I think we really have achieved a lot. And now it's time to go home and do the real work. Develop the pictures, write the proposals, raise the funds, and come back and do some more research.
Since 1986, Yanachaga has enjoyed the status of national park. Yet it has many years to go before it fully recovers from its traumatic past. Stefan urges Dos to visit a community on the edge of the Manu National Park, who seem to have found a way to balance their traditional life with the modern.
This impressive snow-covered Andes mountain range has always been the major barrier between civilizations, and even today very few roads make it through these peaks. We've come to Cusco, the capital of the once so mighty Inca. From here they ruled an empire that stretched from Chile to Ecuador.
Daily life has changed little today. Every village has its own distinctive traditions, a mix of all the cultural influences ever felt in the region. Here, Spanish-style hats are combined with traditional quechua embroidery. Cusco is a staging point on the way to Manu, a chance for Dos and his family to regroup and restock with fresh provisions. In Cusco's ancient streets, the effects of this centuries-old cultural mix is also evident. Here the conquering Spanish built their monuments directly on the massive stone foundations crafted by the Inca. Dos is anxious to get going on the long drive down to the tropical homeland of the indigenous Machigenga people.
We set off for the Manu National Park, one of the greatest rainforest regions on Earth. Although the Inca civilization touched much of Peru, on the other side of these mountains live people who were never influenced by their culture. Here we are on the edge of one of the greatest rainforest regions on Earth. Pilcopata is a lone outpost on the edge of Manu, and the last place with running water and electricity.
Dos goes to the local hospital to find out if they have a spare four-wheel drive to carry all the luggage and equipment.
Attention. This is the only way to reach North area with our luggage. Here the ambulance. Great news.
I promise to bring it back in a couple of hours. Meanwhile, Femke is getting advice on the best way of getting to the community we want to visit, Huacaria.
The ambulance is the only vehicle available here. It's just big enough to carry the luggage, but the team, along with the guides and porters, will have to go in on foot. To transport the photographic equipment, they charter the only remaining wheeled vehicle in Pilcopata. hike through the rainforest offers Dos a welcome opportunity for photography.
After about 4 hours we meet the first villagers and we are immediately introduced to the most important men in the community.
Another gentleman.
Alberto turns out to be the chief
shaman.
and shaman at the same time.
Yes, and he studied.
So we're colleagues actually.
Yes.
Shona joins us as our
so we're gonna
interpreter
go with
and
him,
guide.
visit this garden, and then. We're
Although
gonna do one
initially
also
our
with
introduction
kids,
looks a little bit formal, soon we find out that these are very friendly people with a good sense of humor.
Do you have to be very experienced to use these arrows?
These expert bow and arrow hunters now want to test our skills.
Holy good morning, how do you do it at your age? Holy.
Lo sueltas, dile que suelte la pita.
Suelta la pita.
Suelta la pita. Que le suelte.
Trek en in één keer loslaten.
Okay. Soy mujer, ¿no?
Dat is mijn!
Alberto shows Dos around the village. He explains that 26 families live here in Huacaria, 120 people in all, drawn from 3 tribes, the Huachipari, the Machugenga and the Quechua. Traditionally, these tribes would not have lived in one village.
That's your mother.
Es mi mamá.
But this community was formed to see if, together, they're able to develop a lifestyle balanced between traditional and modern, that's sustainable in the modern world. The community supports itself through hunting, agriculture, and collecting medicinal plants.
Hemorrhaging.
The village is also seeking additional income by looking to develop ecotourism. Travelers are invited to stay with them and learn their ways. At first glance, the forest looks deserted, but in fact there's a fierce ongoing war of survival going on here. Each organism is competing for vital food and space. At the same time, they have to avoid being eaten by cunning predators. Plants are perhaps the best example of this double personality. Although they don't appear to move, they battle for each centimeter of earth in search of soil and light. They've developed powerful chemical defenses to avoid being eaten. But their enemies, in turn, have just as powerful antidotes and tools to combat them. These leafcutter ants live in a colony numbering in the thousands. Separated by size into different castes, each has a specialized task to perform, from foraging to leaf cutting to tending the fungal gardens underground. Over the centuries, the Machigenga have developed an intimate knowledge of the forest by carefully observing nature and trying to understand its processes. They have adapted so well to the forest that they've been able to live here for thousands of years without exhausting its resources.
He's getting the fruit out of the tree quickly there.
Through respect for life in all its forms, the Machigenga have learned to use the treasure of plants and animals of this forest for all kinds of purposes.
We join Alberto on a plant collecting mission. One of the first plants he shows us is growing on a so-called walking tree.
Es una planta, se llama
This little plant with small star-shaped leaves is used by women as a contraceptive. These roots are used to treat snake bites.
Yeah, you grain it and then you...
Emplasto.
But the main goal of our trip today is to collect the 8 ingredients for a mysterious potion called ayahuasca, which Alberto uses to get into a trance for shamanistic rituals. Maybe Alberto sees me as a medical colleague because he takes me across the river to a secret place where 3 of the most important ingredients can be found.
Totally full of medical plants. Over 150 species.
The leaves of this yerba de isanga have all kinds of patterns that during the trance become animals and ghosts whose meaning only the shaman can interpret.
So that your dreams have more figure.
And this is to mix with ayahuasca.
This is yerba de arco iris, which causes hallucinations, but at the same time prevents you from becoming addicted. We also collect some herbs for the doctor in Pilcopata. And on our way back, we collect the last ingredient, coca leaves.
They don't call this rainforest for nothing. It rains here virtually every day, which over a year adds up to more than 1.5 meters of rain, providing ideal conditions for a morning wash.
After that refreshing start, it's time to go to school. Today, Alberto has secrets to tell.
He is planning to teach the children how to prepare a medicine that is good against intestinal parasites, a common problem in the village.
The plant he uses is called havas havas, which he chops, pounds, and after adding boiled water, is squeezed through a cloth.
For Alberto, who wants to keep the old traditions alive, this is an ideal way of getting his knowledge over to the youngest members of the community.
After seeing the reactions of the kids, I'm a little apprehensive, but here it goes. It's very bitter, and it gives me a strange hot feeling in my stomach. For Alberto, who wants to keep the old traditions alive, this is a unique way of getting his knowledge over to the youngest members of the community. That evening, Alberto, whose Machikenga name we discover is Dari Huarepa, explains to us in detail how to make the ayahuasca potion.
So, and how much does it have?
The preparation is a ritual in itself. Even the precise placement of these coca leaves has a significance. I begin to see a transformation in this man, who looked so ordinary when we first met him, but is now radiating a mystical power, the power of the shaman.
As the full moon rises, Alberto begins the ayahuasca ritual. The shaman is the mediator between the human and the spirit world. He needs to plead the case of the humans with the spirits. By going into a trance, he liberates himself from earthly ties to the point where he can sense the breath of the spirits. By entering their world, he gets the power to sort out problems in daily life. Every month, Alberto repeats this ritual, ensuring the balance of his community.
I admire this man who is walking a tightrope between 2 cultures.
The experiment being carried out here at Huacarilla offers hope for the future of forests like the Manu. By finding a sustainable balance between the old ways and the new, a new generation is being given a chance to look for the best in both worlds.